TGIF everyone, King 5 meteorologist Adam Claibon here with an update on the system that's moving through today on our first alert weather day that is looking like it's packing a lot of rain, but also most importantly quite a bit of wind, which is still yet to come as we head on into the night, especially for a very localized area that could see the worst of it later on here into the night. The system that we're dealing with right now, pretty typical, especially for this time of the year, but it's one of the first ones that we have seen of this magnitude so far. You see I got my orange and yellow on. It's fall, it's November. Here we go into the wettest month of the year, and it's shaping up to start off at least like that here as we go on into the evening. So let's go ahead and get into that first alert weather day. Yes, today is that, and we are in that alert until 11 p.m. tonight. The heavy rain, that's been around, and we've seen some river flooding because of that too. We're going to talk about that, but our main focus is going to be on the stronger winds that start to crank up a little more later this evening and into the first half of tonight, and especially in a very specific area we're going to talk about where that could be the worst. Urban river flooding, we're already seeing some of that. I told you we're going to talk about that here soon. And then the spotty power outages might be a little more widespread in a very particular spot is what we're going to keep an eye out for with some of these impacts as they come on by. Let's go ahead and move on over to Snoqualmie Pass, where the snow, it came down last night, and you can see fresh coating there. Now this is pretty wet and thick snow. What's going to help out is this eventually is going to get start to refreeze again, or start to freeze again as we go later on into late tonight and into the day tomorrow. So that's going to help to build and solidify a nice base. But for the daytime hours and heading into the night, the first part of the night, snow level's still going to be quite high, so traveling shouldn't be too much of a concern as we go throughout that. Let's look at Queen Anne as we go through some of the cameras here. Rainy, not too breezy here as we actually are looking at Bellingham, and you can see those areas pretty wet. Currently at Everett, you can tell that the skies are pretty cloudy and gloomy, but the winds not picking up so much there. It's actually as you get closer to Seattle that you start to notice a little more wind, and down around Tacoma where we have some of that too, especially in Tacoma as the winds are wrapping around the Olympics, and eventually you're going to start to scoot a little farther to the north. So our forecast is still calling for it to be quite active here as we head on into the evening, but you can definitely tell as we look at some of the areas right there, the rain has come down heavily out along the coast, and it's going to start to subside to a certain degree. We'll have more off and on showers, but we've seen anywhere between 2 to 3 inches just today alone out along the coast, and farther north 1 to 2 inches around Bellingham. And then as you go south of there, the spots where we were expecting it to stay drier, they actually have around Tacoma, Seattle, and Everett. And we're going to show you how that's being reflected on the radar here pretty soon, and how there is an area void of any sort of moderate or heavy precipitation because of that rain shadowing from the Olympics. Olympia has picked up about 2 inches here for the day. We got the clouds and the wind out along the coast. Westport, waves crashing on the rocks there. Winds starting to crank up closer to about 25 to 35 miles per hour. Gusts still not too out of hand yet, though. Now, this is all part of our atmospheric river, which is going to be sinking southward. And our atmospheric river, highly concentrated area of moisture in the atmosphere. It sinks south here throughout the night, so that takes a lot of the heavier precipitation along with it, and down into California where they are going to be definitely greeting that. Hopefully not too much at one time for them though. And then we'll go on into the next couple of days, still expecting to see some showers around, but not as widespread and heavy as what we're seeing here for this evening. There's the rain. You can see that across parts of Puget Sound, but right there in the smack dab middle, you can see around Seattle there is that opening in the radar showing a very limited amount of any sort of moderate or heavier rain. You might see a few light showers, maybe a few sprinkles there, but generally it's farther to the north. Everett, yeah, light rain, but it's farther north than that, heading around Mount Vernon and up towards Bellingham. And then south, you can see Tacoma right on that edge. We're starting to see some of those moderate showers coming in as we go later into the afternoon, and you'll see a lot more of that just continuing to come down at a consistent rate out there along the coast as we just keep the moisture coming in and coming in. Zooming all the way out, we're looking at that pipeline of moisture, that atmospheric river, as it's continuing to work its way across parts of the Pacific Northwest. It sinks south here later into the night. While it's around, though, and still for a while, we do have a flood watch that is out until 5 p.m., taking a little while for this to load up. But there across western Washington, you can see all the green that's showing up. It's until 5 p.m. even though we do expect to see the rain out of here later on into the evening because of all that water still continuing to stream down from some of the higher elevations. That could still create some flooding issues as we head into that time zone. And that's the reason for that. That's until 5 p.m. We also have the flood warnings that are out. Those are the areas shaded in the light green for some of our rivers around here. Moderate flooding for the Tolt, the Snoqualmie, and the Skokomish River. Then we have minor flooding for the Stillaguamish, the Skykomish, and the Puyallup River. You also are going to see that winds will be relatively breezy around parts of Puget Sound, the Kitsap Peninsula, and then through Hood Canal, and then looks like down, it looks like the I-5 corridor. That's where we could see some gusts closer to maybe 40-45 miles per hour. So that's not the tip top of our range when it comes to the winds. That's going to be farther north, and this is for areas around the northeastern part of the Olympic Peninsula, Camano, Whidbey Island, and we're talking about there around the Everett area where we could see some gusts around 55 to 60 miles per hour. That high wind warning, not in effect yet. That's not until later this evening when we start to see that wind coming more so out of the west. And I'm going to show you that here soon as to why that's going to be the case and why winds are expected to be a little higher up that way. High wind warning still also in effect too as you go south of Willapa Hills, and that's going to be for gusts closer to 55 to 65 miles per hour. Still going to be quite strong in those areas. So let's get into the winds. Widespread breezy winds around here as we go throughout the afternoon, and we'll see some gusts pretty normally around 25 to 35, maybe 40 miles per hour. But then let's go into the night. 6, 7 o'clock, we start to see that wind starting to come more so out of the west. And looking there through the Strait of Juan de Fuca, you can start to see those winds picking up just a bit more. While in the areas that are issued under the high wind warning are not really noticing much of the wind quite yet. Once we get into that later time frame, later tonight after 8 p.m. and then going on into the early hours of Saturday, that's when you start to see those gusts pick up because that wind will come right through the Strait of Juan de Fuca, the terrain around the Olympic Peninsula, Vancouver Island. They're going to act as a funnel, so that's going to help to accelerate that wind through the region there and then help to impact those areas that are going to be under the high wind warning as we go on into late tonight. So once we start to see that wind on down with the system departing, we'll eventually get down to marks around 20, maybe 30 miles per hour by earlier tomorrow morning, and we'll see that winds will still be breezy throughout the day tomorrow, but we will start to see the worst of them getting out of here, and we'll keep the wind gust around more so 35 to maybe 45 miles per hour, and things will start to wind on down a bit more by late tomorrow night. Future track showing areas of rain coming through. We still have that rain shadow initially, but then it will start to fill in a little more as we go on into the night, helping to bring in a little more rain for areas such as Tacoma and Seattle and Everett. But behind that, we get past midnight, we're seeing a lot of the steady rain now out of here. Snow begins to break out for the mountains, and that's going to help to pile up more on top of the very slushy base that we have initially, which will start to solidify once the colder air comes back around, and those will start to continue to actually be around into the day for Sunday also. Now, additional rain we still expect between about 1.5 inches to maybe 2.5 inches out along the coast, up around Bellingham, 1/2 inch to 1 inch there, and then seeing maybe about 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 inch around Puget Sound, while areas farther south, Olympia, Chehalis, we're talking about another 1 to 2 inches expected into those parts as we head on into that point. And then the snow levels, they're going to stay high, so through about 1 a.m. tonight, not much really falling across the passes for snow. But then we get past that point, we start to see the colder air arrive. The snow levels, they start to fall back down through 5 p.m. tomorrow. We're back up to around 6 to maybe 10 inches, beginning to pile up on top of what we already have there, and then more to come with a foot, maybe 2, throughout late Sunday night and heading on into Monday as the colder air and the colder pattern starts to take back over. Not quite as chilly today as yesterday. We'll keep highs actually in the 50s. Still more of those showers to come across areas here farther north. Showers generally lighter here farther south as highs will be around 60. Bremerton, we could hit 60 this afternoon, 57 in Everett. Areas farther south will see a bit more of that rain around, especially around Shelton and in Olympia and in Yelm. Farther north, Tacoma, Federal Way. Again, the rain will pick up a little more than what we've been noticing throughout the morning, but won't be seeing quite much more here as we head on into the evening. And then as far as tonight's lows, colder air is starting to settle in, low 40s, 30s ahead for those lows, and then we get into a long stretch of 40s. The colder pattern is going to be sticking around for Saturday all the way through next Thursday, maybe even beyond that, with highs just barely getting out of the 30s by Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and next Thursday. And kind of a neat icon to see on there, right? Monday and Tuesday, some snow showers, snowflakes, I would say, probably mixing in with some of the rain that we're going to have with that. Should be extremely light moisture. We're not expecting any sort of huge impacts when it comes to travel by that point. But again, as we head into that time, of course, we'll continue to fine-tune that forecast for you. But at least for tonight and into the rest of today, our first alert weather day, we're focusing on some of the flooding, but mainly the strong winds that are going to be out there throughout the evening and into the first half of the night. For you who are in areas around the Everett region, make sure that you are being quite aware and make sure that you have a plan just in case the power does go out. All right, everyone, stay safe. Also, have a good evening and try to make your way home here in the rain here later on into the night. We'll have more updates for you coming up on the 4 and 5 p.m. show. Plus, we'll keep you updated here online. Take care.
For more local news coverage, live and on demand, watch King 5 Plus. Download free on Roku and Fire TV.